Well, multi-billionaire investor Jacob Rothschild is making some ominous statements about the future of the global economy and politics in general. Jacob Rothschild, this article says he's sounding the alarm over the stability of the post-war orders, what he called it. He was talking to his RIT Capital Investment Group. Rothschild warned that the post-war world order was at risk on Tuesday due to rising tensions over trade between the U.S. and China, along with high debt levels in the Eurozone. He says the financier's £3.2 billion RIT capital investment vehicle said it was sitting on the sidelines and not adding more to stocks because of fears the 10-year run-up in stock prices could end. So he makes a reference to 9/11 and the 2008 financial crisis, Rothschild, when he's talking to investors to pull out of U.S. markets or not invest. He says in 9/11 and in the 2008 financial crisis, the powers of the world worked together with a common approach. Cooperation today is proving much more difficult. This puts at risk the post-war economic and security order, the 82-year-old said. So he's hoping for a return to the cooperation and common approach under the 9/11 disaster and 2008 financial crisis. He's saying that the circumstances of our policy is to maintain our limited exposure to quoted equities and to enter into new commitments with great caution. This article adds that RIT has 47% of its money exposed to the stock market on a net basis, which is low by historical standards. Pointed to areas of weaker growth emerging, compounded by, quote, potentially destructive debt levels in Europe and the likelihood of a trade war. Shares in China have fallen 22%, they add, since January due to increasing trade war fears. This is following reports from earlier this year. It's one from late February where Rothschild was complaining over the fact that, or was reported that Rothschild, poor Jacob Rothschild, had to take a hit on his annual bonus. His annual performance bonus was cut in half last year from over £1 million to just over £400,000 for his annual bonus for his work at RIT Capital Partners. This is due to their poor performance over the past over a year now. He was making some similar statements I covered back in 2017 as well during that RIT Capital's report, again threatening a global collapse if the global politics don't change and fall in line with the world order that Rothschild expects countries to abide by. He's saying that he will not invest. He's calling it a volatile market. This is another report just from today based on today's statements that he gave, saying the half-year net asset value at RIT Capital Partners rose for a total return on assets of 3.2%. RIT said that it maintained a cautious approach with a net quoted equity exposure averaging 47%. Again, the recent quote from Rothschild reads, many of the world's economies have enjoyed a broad-based acceleration not seen since the aftermath of the financial crisis of 2008, with as many as 120 countries seeing stronger growth last year. So he was used to making money, or he made a lot of money, I guess he's admitting, following the 2008 economic collapse. Rothschild benefited from that, and now he's not as much, so he's pulling out these investments, saying that, however, we continue to believe that this is not an appropriate time to add risk. Current stock market valuations remain high by historical standards, inflated by years of low interest rates and the policy of quantitative easing, which is now coming to an end. Cycles in its 10th positive year. It's the longest on record. We are now seeing some areas of weaker growth emerge. Indeed, the IMF has recently predicted some slowdown. Rothschild said that the problems confronting the Eurozone were of concern, given the potentially destructive levels of debt in a number of countries. He had the likelihood of trade wars had increased tension, and the impact on equities had been marked. problems are likely to continue in emerging markets, compounded by rising interest rates and the US Fed's monetary policy, which has drained global dollar liquidity. And again, that quote where he references bizarrely saying that he wants a return to the common approach after 9/11 and this 2008 financial crisis. The resolution of these problems in this unpredictable era will surely be difficult. Back during those crises, the two different crises, the powers of the world work together, he said, with a common approach. Cooperation today proving much more difficult. This puts at risk the post-war economic and security order. So that's what Rothschild's saying to his investors at RIT today. And again, he'd been blaming other things that he didn't like going on in global politics for similar threats that he was making over his investments, saying that he was threatening to pull out of U.S. markets last year. So it's falling in line with those statements. I talked about this before, a previous video. The previous statements from Jacob Rothschild leading up to today's report previously said that he was giving disturbing predictions for the United States economy in a letter to investors, last year's letter, saying that as the geopolitical situation continues to deteriorate, he will continue to pull out of U.S. markets. In that RIT Capital Partners investors report, last year's, Rothschild stated ominously, the period of monetary accommodation may be coming to an end. Geopolitical problems remain widespread, prove increasingly difficult to resolve. They are limiting their exposure to equity markets. They're diversifying asset allocation towards equity investments where value creation is driven by some identifiable catalyst or which are exposed to longer-term positive structural trends. Not a good sign for the American markets, pointing to a shift away from U.S. capital markets, instead moving his investments into Far Eastern markets. So he began doing that last year. A lot of things going on with the Rothschilds and their investments in Asia. I talked about this 1MDB scandal. They'd been exposed for money laundering. The Rothschild Bank, the former prime minister of Malaysia, is facing decades in prison over that scandal right now. So the Rothschild had some involvement in that scandal. And then they did not say that it was directly related to the 1MDB scandal, but also just last week, they had to close an office in Singapore. Rothschild Wealth Management office in Singapore had to shut down last week following this other scandal they were involved in Malaysia. Last year, they were talking about how they're moving investments into the Far Eastern markets, pulling out of the U.S. in large part. So I'd like to know what you think about these most recent statements from Rothschild. Tell me what you think in a comment. Subscribe to the channel. I will follow up as new info comes out. Leave a like on this video. It's greatly appreciated. Another reminder, I'm on patreon.com/realityreader. Thank you, everybody that donates over there. It makes a huge difference. It gives me some extra time to put back in the channel, keep reporting on these issues. And I'm going to continue to try to also branch out onto other platforms. Who knows what's going to happen on YouTube. So I do have realityreader.com. I had that previous report that we looked at. I linked to the original sources there as well. But you can check back at realityreader.com. Maybe bookmark that for more updates. I also have a blog over on Steemit. Thank you for your support on Patreon. I also do have a link to PayPal in the description. Some people prefer. If you would like to donate through PayPal, paypal.me/realityreader. Also linked in the video description. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. I will follow up soon. Thank you.